Okay, hello everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Saw some of you earlier today in this very room, so in which case, welcome back. So we are here today to talk about the power of connectivity. So I think it's fair to say that if you are at the Aspen Ideas Festival, you probably treat access to the internet as a given. Just a guess. It's in your hotel rooms or wherever it is you're staying. It's in our Starbucks. It's certainly in your homes. And for most of us, and I include myself in this group, the biggest frustration around connectivity is when the Wi-Fi on the airplane is a little slow. I mean, you got to admit it, that is very, very frustrating, yes. So, and now we're all, and particularly here at Aspen Ideas Festival, we're all moving on and talking about AI and more advanced technologies. So it's really easy to forget that actually millions of Americans still do not have basic internet connection. It is sort of shocking that in 2023 we're still talking about this. So why is this still a problem? And where is the light at the end of the tunnel? So, spoiler alert, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And as much as I love talking about this, I'm particularly looking forward to the day when we don't have conversations about why is everybody not connected, but rather we talk about all the incredible things that people can do with their connection. So we have two people here today who are a huge part of the solution to getting everybody connected. So all the way to my left is Alan Davidson. He is the Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Communication and Information at the U.S. Department of Commerce, where he is the administrator with the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, which most of us know as NTIA. He was previously, and that's where I first met you, I think, Alan, Vice President of Global Policy, Trust, and Security at the Mozilla Foundation. He was with Commerce during the Obama administration, had stints at New America and Google, so you've been around. Broderick Johnson is the Executive Vice President of Public Policy and Digital Equity at Comcast. He was previously a partner at Covington and Burling Law Firm, was previous to that Assistant to the President and Secretary of the Cabinet under President Obama, Deputy Assistant for Legislative Affairs under President Clinton, and one of the things I love about you, Chair of My Brother's Keeper Alliance Advisory Council, and a board member of the Obama Foundation, the Black Economic Alliance, and the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. So we have two incredibly impressive people. So, Broderick, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah.
Why is this so hard? Why is it so hard to get everybody online?
Well,
what are the obstacles?
Thank you for that first question.
Yes.
I'll explain it very simply, right? Alan, great to be on this panel. It's great to see you again, man. And thank you for everything that you're doing in government. So why is it so hard? Well, it's been hard for so long, of course. Affordability has been a major issue for so many tens of millions of households in the United States and individuals. At Comcast, we've known this for some time, certainly. So 12 years ago, we started to address this with our Internet Essentials product for low-income families. 10 million individuals signed up during the course of that time to address the affordability issue. At $9.95 a month, we offered internet access. And we knew that it was really important to address the affordability issue. We've learned, of course, over time that affordability isn't the only issue, and we'll talk about some of the barriers, certainly. And when you speak about the light at the end of the tunnel, we have this unprecedented, historic investment by this administration with the support of Democrats and some Republicans in Congress to address both the access issues around deployment, $42.5 billion to address that, but then also $14 billion, more than $14 billion for what's called the ACP program, the Affordable Connectivity Program. There are almost 50 million, not just individuals, but households in this country who are eligible for that. The good news is that thus far, about 18.5 million households have actually enrolled in that program, and so they're getting internet access through Comcast and other ISPs. We still got a long way to go to get another 30 million households signed up, But I'd say we have lots of reason to be optimistic.
So there's 30 million remaining that
Eligible households, roughly.
eligible households.
That's right.
And is it and are they not? Do they not have access because of affordability issues, or it's just not available to them?
So these are about affordability issues, perceived affordability issues,
Yeah.
right? Because in fact, they are eligible for a voucher that can give them free access to the internet through the products that we offer, Internet Essentials and Internet Essentials Plus, and that other ISPs offer as well. It's an
ISPs is
astounding number.
internet service providers. Sorry,
Sorry.
my
I
job
wasn't gonna speak in
here
acronyms.
is going to be, yes, to spell out
Internet
the acronym.
Service Providers.
Thank you.
ISPs. There.
Yes.
How's that?
Excellent.
Okay, all right.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so Alan, so now we're going to, this is private industry. Let's go over to what the government is doing. So we talked about the infrastructure plan. So so let's back up and just talk about what happened, what that means, and how this is going to get us to 100%, and of course the role of the NTIA.
Great. Well, thank you for that introduction and question, and
Yeah.
Broderick, it's great to be here. Thank you for what you're doing and what Comcast is doing. Well, and maybe just to back up half step, like what's at stake here? I think we all appreciate that the internet is now the essential communications medium for people, which was not obvious 20 or 30 years ago when some of us started working in this space, right? Today, it is essential for access to jobs, access to education, access to healthcare, access to justice. And it is, Vivian, just as you said, amazing that here we are in America in 2023. And we can break it down. There are millions of households who do not have access, like at any price, to high-speed internet service, right? So you just can't get it. Over 8.5, almost 8.5 million homes in America where you cannot get it. And then millions more.
For love or money, you can't get it.
You can't get it.
Yeah.
And millions more who can't afford it,
Yeah.
don't have the skills, don't have the tools. And so what's exciting is that we've been talking about the digital divide in this country for over 25 years. But finally, thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure law, we have the resources to do something serious about it. $65 billion, my organization's administering $48 billion. The president gave us a very simple mission: to connect everyone in America with high-speed, reliable, affordable internet service. And he keeps saying everyone, by the way, which makes me really nervous. No pressure. But we are going to do this. And billions for access, billions for digital equity programs, and it's now. And that's what's so exciting about this moment and why I'm so glad to be here, because this is a generational moment. Generations before us did really big things. They connected everybody in America with electricity, with water. We built the interstate highway system here. This is our generation's big infrastructure moment, right? This is our chance to connect everyone in America with what they need to succeed in the modern digital economy, and that's a good internet connection. It's going to take years to do it. It's going to take a ton of work, but it is, I do think, a moment where we will look back 10 years from now and say, this was the moment we stepped up.
So let's just break this apart just a little bit more. So we've got access, we have affordability, and we have skills. Mm-hmm. So the first step is access. If you don't have access, whether you have affordability and skills, it doesn't matter. So 8.5 million households,
Homes
Americans,
and offices.
Homes and offices do not have access. So what is the challenge of this? Is this an engineering challenge? Why is it so hard to get connectivity for those 8.5? And then we'll talk about affordability and adoption, of course.
A lot of it's
Go ahead.
A lot of it's economic and speak
Yeah,
to this, but you know that these are just places where it hasn't been affordable to build up until now, right? And so
Rural areas.
rural areas, places where there's not a lot of population density, where there's the topography. So I've been all around America and looking at places like, you know, in Alaska, in New Mexico, where these communities that have don't have the ability to get access because it's just not offered. And what we're going to be doing is making it economical. We're going to be funding private industry largely through the states to be able to build these networks out.
Yeah, and for Comcast, and we're very excited about it because we want to be able to offer access in the unserved parts and underserved parts of this country. And so we are very excited about being able to participate along with state and local governments and others in the monies that will go out from NTIA with announcements to come soon, as well as money that's going out for deployment of broadband, access deployment to broadband deployment. Look, in many urban parts of the country, the issue isn't access.
Yeah.
The issue is adoption, and we'll get to that. But there are absolutely places where it is about deployment. And for us, we're participating in programs all across our footprint. In 24 of the states, for example, we are working with local governments, state and local governments, and getting grants to build out to rural parts of the country that are currently don't have access.
So it's private industry like Comcast that actually builds the capacity to be able to reach those homes?
Yes, and we have obviously great technological abilities. We've been doing this for, for decades. Yeah. And so again, great opportunity to partner with the government to be able to build out and deploy it where it doesn't exist.
Yeah, and I just to give an example of that, I was in Alaska last summer. I visited a village, Tanana, which is on the banks of the Yukon River, way in the interior of Alaska. You have to fly an hour on a bush plane over nothing just to get there. And they do have internet service, but it is very, very weak. So 30 megabits per second service for the whole village, over 200 homes. 30 megabits per second for those who don't know. I will bet that everybody here who has internet service at home has more than that. And they're sharing that in a village and across these 200 homes. And they pay, this woman, Faith, who I met on the banks of the Yukon River, pays $600 to $700 a month. She showed me her bill. I heard this story over and over from folks, to use their little share of that little 30 megabit per second link, which, by the way, goes out a lot when it snows, which is known to happen a fair amount in Alaska.
Oh, God.
So we're going to change that. We are actually have already invested through our tribal connectivity program, part of this $48 billion. We're going to run a fiber optic cable up the Yukon River. It's going to be like a transatlantic cable, but we're going to do it in the middle of a river. And that village is going to have fiber optic service. They're going to get a gigabit per second service like they have in Fairbanks and Anchorage. And the promise is they'll get it at Anchorage prices, which aren't necessarily New York City prices, but they're pretty good. And so that's an example of the challenge we face and the things that we can do to solve it.
Okay, so put those, we're going to work on those 8.5 million. So the people that do have access, they may not be able to afford it. So this is where programs like Comcast come in.
Exactly. So I think there are millions of people who haven't been able to afford it, and there are also millions of people who believe they couldn't afford it, right? But so affordability certainly, again, has been an issue, but there are so many other barriers, and so we commissioned a study last year at Comcast and the year before with the Boston Consulting Group to look at what the barriers are beyond affordability. Because when we were offering $9.95 a month broadband, for so many families it wasn't about affordability, so what are the other barriers? And the barriers have to do with things like distrust. Imagine that. Distrust of government.
Distrust of exactly just what?
Distrust of government. So when government says there's something that's available for you to be able to get internet access or vaccines, right, or other things. Distrust of business. So when Comcast advertises or says you can get internet access for $9.95 a month, it's like, oh, there's a trick here. So we recognize that there are trust issues. Devices, obviously being very important. Relevance, like why should I be online? What difference will it make? And many people being intimidated about being online, what it could mean to their privacy, but also perhaps feeling like they're not capable of being able to do it. So all of those factors have combined, even where affordability is not an issue, and with all this money that's now going out through the ACP program, those barriers still exist. And so how do we address those barriers, especially with the distrust issue? So who's trusted? We can talk about digital navigator programs, but we put a lot of effort into that, as will the federal government.
That's exactly, I think Broderick said it so well. We can have a wire that goes to a family's home, but if they can't afford the bill to get online, that connection doesn't do them any good. And we can have an affordable connection, but if they don't have the tools or the skills or the content's not in the language that they need, it doesn't do any good. We are now investing through the federal government. We have almost $3 billion for digital equity programming in the US that we'll be giving out in the coming years. And every single state, and it'll be given first to states, And every single state in the country has signed up to be part of this digital equity program, which was not a given when we started.
Every state?
Every state. We were worried about that, I have to say, in the beginning, because I wasn't sure that every state in this country and every state governor really wanted to be participating in something called the digital equity program.
Yeah.
But we did, and I think this is an example of a problem that's felt. It's not a red state problem or a blue state problem. It's an everybody problem. And every state, by the end of this year, every state in the country who's signed up to be part of our program will produce a digital equity plan for their state. It's the first time we've actually had this. It sounds so basic, but every state will have a digital equity plan for how they plan to address these issues that Broderick was just talking about. And then we will go from there in terms of spending the money and trying to make sure it's going to people, not just the federal, through the federal government, but out to trusted organizations. And by the way, I'll say, we're going to spend $3 billion. We've not spent $3 billion on digital equity programming in the history of this country. So there's going to be a lot of money coming out into the private sector in the near term, and we need also to make sure that there are organizations and recipients, civic groups, ready to step up and be part of this program. And that's a big reason to be here. We need everybody's help.
And that's what the states are, as part of their digital equity plan.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
We will be giving tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars to states. They will use it to give out to organizations and local community organizations to help get devices to people, to help get people connected online. And I heard the same message about trust. I was down in North Carolina. We met with a bunch of local community leaders. And they said, if it's the federal government coming and telling our folks in our communities to sign up, they're not going to do it. For the ACP or part of digital equity to get a computer, it needs to be trusted. It needs to be church groups. It needs to be local leaders. It needs to be civic organizations, minority organizations. That's who's going to make this happen for people.
Yeah, and who have built up a relationship of trust in their communities already, so they're not sort of missionaries flying in a sense, right?
Right.
But who are also consistent, so it's not just a one-time, hey, sign up, you're on your own. But the best digital navigator organizations tend to be those that take a comprehensive view. So this is how you sign up. This is what's available through the federal government. This is what's available through the ISPs, internet service providers. This is how you use the technology. This is how it can change your life.
Yeah.
So the best organizations are those that tackle either one of those, but even better, all of those issues. I was skeptical too that all the states,
Right.
just, I tend to be pretty optimistic, but I've been through enough political battles to wonder whether or not all states would be involved. But now when we talk about the ACP program, the Affordable Connectivity Program, I get even more optimistic because you've got states like Ohio where over 900,000 eligible households have signed up for the vouchers. Louisiana, the numbers are very significant and getting close to 50% of eligible populations. So there's a tremendous amount of support for this, bipartisan, at least in some corners.
This is such an incredible, we all talk about the problems of polarization and, and I say this as, as a journalist at heart, but we journalists and the news media are part of the problem, talking about the divides and the red state and the blue states and the, red state governors don't want to do this, et cetera. What a success story. I feel like maybe we should all be giving this more attention, which of course we're doing here.
Yeah, we are.
And I would say also, especially at in a conference where we've been talking about bridging divides.
Yeah, exactly.
This is, and I can tell you this story. I had an oversight hearing, which we have to do in the House of Representatives, which is the majority is Republicans, and this is a program that many people have perceived as very, could be viewed as very democratic. I talked to all the members of that committee, all the questions I got. The truth is, whether you're representing a red state or a blue state, Republican or Democrat, this is an issue in your district. And we're hearing it directly from all of them. And I think it's a very powerful moment for us to be solving a problem that transcends politics, we hope, we'll see, but where people on both sides of the aisle care about it.
What role did the pandemic play? Do we think because everybody went home and we were so reliant, do you think this would have happened without the pandemic shining such a bright light on the needs of connectivity?
Yeah, so I've been around, DC government politics for about 4 decades, and how many times would a Democratic or Republican administration or House or Senate have proposals to deal with infrastructure, right? Just bridges and roads. Couldn't get major legislation through. And then the pandemic hit, and not only did major legislation and historic funding get approved, but broadband was included in it.
Yeah.
That to me was pretty shocking, and I think it's because people, again, on both sides of the aisle especially, and their constituents understood that sending children home from school without having access to the internet or devices, people who needed to be able to work from home, people who needed to be in touch with their doctors, just a range of things, realized that through the pandemic, that it was really necessary that all people be online. But that was an emergency situation, and because we're coming out of the pandemic, certainly, it's really important to understand the urgency, if not the emergency. The urgency is still there. But were you surprised? Shocked. See?
No, but I think, so the pandemic did a couple of things. One, it really showed us the need. We knew this was the trajectory that we were on, right? And as a computer scientist, I think on some level it's kind of a miracle that we can do the things that we do online. But the truth is the pandemic showed us that, people who could do their work online were able to work from home. And people who couldn't do that, were put at risk. Those of us whose kids could had good internet connections could do their schoolwork from home. Story after story of people whose, kids had to get their homework from a school bus that went around. I've talked to some folks in a tribal community where the school bus came once a week and delivered the week's homework and picked up the next week's picked up the last week's homework. It showed us the need. It also got us the dollars, which I don't think that Congress would have done without that urgency. And I think the last piece that's so important is it's helped us start to build the movement. And that's the movement that we need to connect everyone. The first trip I took in this job, as we were coming out of the pandemic, I went with the First Lady to Denver, Colorado, and we did a big event about broadband connectivity. And afterwards, I met with a group of community organizations, 16 different organizations who were doing all sorts of this work, right? Like they're helping people get computers who needed them in the middle of the pandemic, helping kids get their homework assignments, teaching people how to get online who didn't speak the right language, each of them doing a little piece of this. Most of those groups did not exist before the pandemic, or the ones that did exist got a huge infusion of energy and support that they didn't have. And I think that is the movement we need to build on, because this is going to take a lot of work, not just the government. It's going to take a lot of help to get everybody the skills and tools they need.
Yeah. One of the things that's interesting about the two of you, and I think sort of a bit of a metaphor about public-private partnership, is you've both been in the public and private side. In fact, you've both switched back and forth a few times. I'm curious how that, I've got sort of a two-part question. One, I'm curious how that shapes your view of working together. You're now in private industry, you're now in government. How it shapes your view of working between private and public, and why it seems to me that particularly when it comes to getting access and making it making broadband access and affordability, it can't happen without a public-private partnership.
People talk disparagingly about the so-called revolving door, where people serve in government and they serve in the private sector,
Yeah.
then they go in government again. So I'm perhaps quite an example of that. But I am absolutely clear that my experiences working in the private sector for companies or representing companies, combined with my government service, has allowed me to see things much more different than other folks who perhaps don't think there's a role for people to work in the public sector and help in the public and private domains. So that's the way I view it. I come to it more informed. And certainly at Comcast, it's been 2 years since I joined. And it was so important for me to come to a company where I could see the resources, not only from the company, but also in terms of partnerships with government at all
To advocate
levels.
within the company.
Exactly,
Yeah.
federal, state, and local, and that was very clear, and it's made me quite proud.
Yeah. Well, I would certainly agree with that part about the experience being so helpful. And I spent most of my career in either nonprofit groups and helping run nonprofit groups, and also in industry. And so that executive experience, management experience, understanding how those organizations work, how a nonprofit gets engaged in something, how how a company views a project like the kinds of projects we're hoping to engage them on. It's, it's enormously helpful in trying to do the job. And it's also, I think, made it clear to me that again, it's back to this thing, we're not going to do this alone in government. Most of the money that we spend on network connectivity will ultimately go to companies who will build those networks and then provide service for years to come. And it will be big companies, and we're hoping there will also be small companies and new innovators. We're taking a kind of all of the above approach to our funding. But ultimately, that's who's going to build these networks, and we need those companies to succeed and be partners. And in this digital equity work, a lot of it's going to be these public interest organizations, grassroots organizations that are going to do that work. So the partnership is essential.
Yeah, so around the BEAD program, that will not be successful, those investments will not be successful without strong partnerships between companies and the government. Signing people up for the ACP, Affordable Connectivity Program. Last week before, about a 9-day period, there was an extended week of action that came out of the White House and out of the administration to really, again, focus on the 30 million households that are not yet signed up to ACP. We held 100+ events, as did many other companies and nonprofits, to support that week of action. And it'll be very interesting to see what kind of success came out of those combined public-private efforts around getting more people signed up.
And I will just say, by the way, this Affordable Connectivity Program is so essential. 18 million households, as we said, rely on it today. Millions more. This is news you can use. Like for families that are up to 200% of the poverty line, there's a program that's available today, and we still have almost 30 million households, 30 million Americans who are not signed up yet. So that's great. The other part, though, that's the hard part that we need help with, is it is not on firm financial footing. This is a program that is. There was a big chunk of money that was given to it, but that money will not last forever. And as early as next year, we're going to need Congress to act to make sure it's on firm financial footing.
Yeah, and I commend you for continuing to talk about this. I know in testimony you've given recently, it's sort of the danger of building broadband highways to nowhere. Because if these networks, as they get built, if people aren't taking advantage of the opportunity to get online, then what will it all been worth?
Right. What's your level of optimism about the additional funding coming from Congress?
I know it's hard to imagine. We're in an environment where there's budget cuts happening, and people are very worried about where we're spending money. This is a place where I think it should be a no-brainer, right? 18 million households. They are not just in one kind of political area or another. They are distributed all across the country, and you've got. I think a lot of people on both sides of the aisle who are starting to realize this is a very important program to the people who live with our constituents. So I'm cautiously optimistic.
That was my next question, which was, do you see any patterns in terms of red state, blue state, urban, rural, racial, race and ethnicity when it comes to sort of adoption and embrace of these programs?
Well, yes, and for me, being so focused on racial disparities, gender disparities, particularly through the Obama Foundation and the My Brother's Keeper work, aware of those disparities, absolutely. Those disparities widen in a situation like the pandemic, but optimistic that those disparities can be closed through the use of technology. And so it's very encouraging that in many minority communities, the divide is being closed because people are they're learning about it and they're signing up. But we still have disparities, certainly, to close going forward, but we can get this.
So, since AI seems to be the theme of the entire Aspen Ideas Festival, it would be remiss of me not to ask you where you see the application of, artificial intelligence, generative artificial intelligence, or in terms of, obviously, it will affect the way people use the connectivity they have. What impact does it have on both access or on adoption of broadband?
Okay. Well, I think a couple of different points here. One is we think a lot about when we connect people with this internet access, or we get them online because we've made it more affordable and given them the tools. What is the internet that they're going to access? What's that internet going to be like, right? And I'll say, by the way, we've had a lot of conversation with states about you're going to have a whole set of new people who are maybe not, who need to think about their privacy and security, might be more susceptible to fraud because they haven't spent a lot of time online. We need to be protecting them. AI is going to be a part of that landscape.
Yeah.
And I'll just say, I think the administration is also quite keenly interested in all of these issues that are coming up. We believe that responsible AI innovation is going to bring huge benefits, but you got to underscore the responsible part. We need to make sure that we're addressing the serious risks that come up. And I do think actually, and there was a great conversation, there have been great conversations already today, that it helps to separate the existential fears, like the robots are coming and they will kill us all, right? That's one set of things, and that's probably not happening for a while, but like, let's have a conversation about that. But let's also then have a separate conversation that's about the real harms today, facial recognition that's terribly biased against people of color, right? Redlining in financial models, right? Privacy and security issues that are happening now because of the use of these models. And those are the two conversations that we really got to move forward on.
And the health of information integrity online. Yeah.
Disinformation, misinformation is going to be a huge thing, especially as you think about going into an election coming next year.
Exactly.
It's going to be wild.
But again, yes, looking kind of more perhaps optimistically, I mean, realizing, but realizing the dangers, absolutely. But sometimes, like, the talk about the dangers can inhibit people, though, from exploring then what AI could mean beneficially for them. And so that's why it's so important that we also look at how closing the digital divide can help address the opportunities that AI is bringing. I know there's legitimate concerns that people have expressed about what's happening with jobs going away, right? The future of work, right? And that so many service sector jobs, for example, are going away, and how will people be employed? Well, so many of those jobs, though, are moving toward tech-based new opportunities, as well as the opportunities that can come from advanced technology. I'll give an example of something that we're doing at Comcast. We are supporting an organization called Hidden Geniuses out of Oakland, California, right? And these hidden geniuses are young men of color, most of them in their teens, who it's not about just teaching them basic digital skills, but it's helping them learn advanced digital skills that can lead to entrepreneurial opportunities as well, AI being fundamentally important then to them as they explore things. But we can't let AI, which is a reality, as we know, is being talked about here and elsewhere constantly, really discourage people who need to be online, who need to learn digital skills from participating.
Yeah. Well, that leads me to, and we're going to be going to questions soon, so I hope you have your questions ready. But to close out at least this part of the conversation on a high note, let's talk about, and yes, of course, AI is both wondrous and terrifying, and it's a classic example of two things can be true at the same time. So, and we can embrace both of those things, mitigate for the bad, and sort of optimize for all the promise that AI brings. Which leads me to the question of, let's imagine the world. So rather than at the Aspen Ideas Festival, I don't know how many years from now, a few years from now, let's just say 5 years from now, we're sitting here and we're going, we begin the session by saying, guess what, everybody? The digital divide is closed. Every single person in America who wants broadband has broadband access. It is affordable. We've made great strides at encouraging people to be online and not to be afraid or suspicious, all of those things. Okay, let's imagine that world. Now,
we'll both be retired.
Yeah.
Right? Drop the mic.
You'll be drinking your martini somewhere. Mission accomplished. So what will people use broadband for in the future?
If you don't mind, though, I don't want us to get too far ahead of ourselves.
Oh, come on, just for a minute.
Because I remember when I was in the Clinton White House in '98, we were holding our first digital divide events and speeches, and the big audacious goal back there was to connect a computer in every classroom.
Oh.
Right? Remember that? It was
yes, I do.
Was the big audacious goal. But look, and the reason I said let's not look too far ahead is because Again, for tens of millions of families, individuals, the future is now. When you look at the fact that 92% of today's jobs require at least one digital skill, I'd like 5 years from now to be able to say we've accomplished being able to get people to use digital skills training in order to compete for those jobs. And then education, again, we know it's just going to take more and more advanced skills and digital skills training so people can participate there. Telehealth, so many people still don't know the benefits of telehealth because they're not online and don't have the tools. But I also think we need to keep in mind the joy
Yes.
that the internet brings as we think about now and the future. I want to just tell this one story about, this gentleman that I met in Houston, 90-year-old African-American gentleman participating in a digital navigators program, not intimidated by it at all. Sitting there, he's got his laptop open, and he says to me, "You know why I love being online? It's because I can watch old episodes of Gunsmoke." Right? And you can't dispute the importance of that in his life, right? And the
Whatever
joy it
turns
was
you on.
bringing him. I mean, yes, I think about this guy
Yeah.
every time I talk about this, right? So immediately, though, is what I wanted to come back to, not thinking too far down the road. So sorry if I
That's okay.
hijacked your
That's
question.
okay.
No, I think, well, first of all, I'm maybe more optimistic because maybe it takes a little longer, but we did, actually, if you look now, at that big audacious goal, I think there's something like 99.8% of the schools in America actually do have connectivity, and we did make that happen. It took a while. I think to your question, it's the Gunsmoke answer. Like, we won't know what's going to bring people joy or what they're going to do in the future, right? If you had said 20 years ago that kids would be doing their homework from, sitting at home in the middle of a pandemic, I'm not sure people would have expected that as the answer either.
Right.
But I think if we do this right, we will have, first of all, an economy that's way more resilient. People can participate in it from all over the country. Many, many different locations can choose where they live and participate in the information economy. I think if we do this right, we'll have a healthier society, like literally giving people access to healthcare and to telehealth, but also getting people engaged in the civil discussions that we need to be having and we've been talking about here. And I think we'll have a very innovative economy where we're getting the best ideas from a much broader set of people who've been left out and left behind. And I think about, that's like a woman I met, Anna Hoffman, who's a tribal leader in Bethel, Alaska, and talks about how it's not just about the internet, what the internet is. She's very excited about this work that we're doing to connect these communities, but it's not just about what they are going to get from the internet, like access to telehealth or access to jobs or being able to, watch YouTube videos. It's what they are going to give us, right, when we are all connected. Access to their local knowledge, access to their culture, which we haven't had a chance to see. They're preserving their language.
It's giving them a voice in the world.
Giving them a voice, getting their ideas. And we are better as a society when we've got everybody at the table.
I love that.
And this is a set of people who we need to bring to the table.
Can I just add here, too, that being somewhat futuristic, and so as mentioned, I'm on the board of the Black Economic Alliance, and our major mission and objective is to close the racial wealth gap and to create entrepreneurial opportunities. And that's, of course, been an area where the disparities have been so consistently bad. So at Comcast, we've got something called Project Up. It's a major initiative. You probably see it all around here. We have a tent where you'll see lots of Project Up signs, and it's $1 billion initiative to address closing the digital divide in terms of access to the internet, but also creating opportunities for investments in economic mobility. So being able to support minority, women-owned, veterans-owned businesses in order to be able to create, through technology, greater competitiveness for them, which we know means so much to the success of this country globally. So as we, again, think about the future and think about more advanced ways that we can close other difficult divides, that's what I would say is going to be important. I'd like 5 years from now for us to be able to say we've been able to close the racial wealth gap as a result of these investments.
Amen to that. Okay, we're going to take your questions. We have, let's go right here. There's a mic right behind you. There you go. Please say your name and your affiliation if you feel comfortable doing so before your question.
Thank you so much. My name is Frankie Miranda. I'm president and CEO of the Hispanic Federation, and I'm a very proud partner of Comcast on digital equity and digital access programs. We're very excited. The more than 600 members, nonprofit direct service providers of the Hispanic Federation about the digital equity allocation of funding. The hard work of the funding is done, is there. All the states are going to be part of it. But nonprofits sometimes have issues with accessing funds from state because of the different requirements. How are you going to make sure that each state has a true program or plan that will really do equity, reach equity in communities, especially for Latino community that has been so affected by the pandemic and is so needed to get into digital skilling and access?
It's a great question. It's a huge issue, and we do worry about it. And so there's a couple of things that we've tried to do in our program. One is that we've said to states, they need to listen to local communities and local community organizations, and they actually have to show us in their plans. Like, it's part of their homework assignment. So before they get the money for their access programs and before they get the money for their digital equity programs, they have to show us a plan, and that plan has to include how they have reached out to local communities. So we're going to hold their feet to the fire on that. I think the bigger issue is, how do we make sure that organizations like yours have a seat at the table, have the resources? There'll be direct grants coming through these programs as well. But I think it's local community organizations that are the ones who know where the problems are and know how to best solve them. And that's part of the movement we need to build. And thank you for your work being part of it.
Great. Let's take somebody right here. Yes.
Hi, my name
Hey.
is Jessica. My name is Jessica Santana. I'm the CEO of a national organization called America on Tech. We've been partnering with Comcast for over 5 years now on bringing tuition-free technology education courses to underestimated communities across the country that prepare them for careers in tech. One question that I have for you all is, in the beginning of this conversation, you said that, the digital divide and conversations around digital equity have been persistent for over 25 years. And it seems like something like the pandemic accelerated a lot of the plans and ideas and initiatives that folks wanted to work on. I'm curious if you all could shed a little bit of light on why does it take for something so drastic to happen in order for people to feel like their feet are put against the fire when organizations like ours have been fighting for these resources for such a long time?
I suspect the whole panel shares that frustration.
No, look, I think it's the broader systemic issues, right, in this country that have held people of color and women, the LGBTQ community back for decades, right? It's through the political power of those groups, those demographics, so that we have been able to see and make change. But these are persistent systemic problems that we face, and I think getting the attention of folks over centuries has been a challenge, certainly, and I wish I could say that it's a lot easier now, but we have certainly made progress. And then again, in looking at the amount of money that is now out there from the federal government to address the digital divide, it is really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It's incumbent upon us to take advantage of it, though. Us as people of color in companies like Comcast, in organizations like yours, in communities, to say we need to be part of those digital equity plans that are being rolled out so we can make sure that people aren't left behind, as has so often happened. And also, by the way, patience, right, of some people for addressing disparities kind of wears off, whether it's about the debate around affirmative action, right, or whether it's about, well, we've spent so much money in a particular program. This is from them, perhaps, I wouldn't just call them cynics, but people who think that government shouldn't be spending money on certain things. That's why it's so important that people sign up, say, to the ACP program, to demonstrate that, in fact, we appreciate the opportunity that is here now that we need to take advantage of, and then use that power.
It is definitely long overdue. This has been long overdue, but I think part of it is also, I would just say also a little bit is this is the work of government that we need to have happen, the machinery of government that is not stepping up, that is falling behind what we need. And I know it's sort of popular in America and a lot of places to say, you know, like government is part of the problem or government is going to waste the money, but the truth is there are a lot of places where we actually do need our civic structure to step up and do things. This is an example of one of them. AI is probably going to be an example of another. And when we fall behind and we allow ourselves to just take the excuse, oh, it's too hard, it's too partisan, you know, we're too divided, that's not going to get our society where it needs to be.
Just over here in the back. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tara Garcia Mathewson. I cover education for the Hechinger Report. I'm one of the fellows here at this festival. I am confused about the timeline. Maybe you are very close to retirement, but laughing about how we will reach this goal after you're long retired. I don't understand why $48 billion is not enough, and I'm wondering if it's the technology to reach extreme places or the money to get there. Can you explain more about why the timeline is so far out, or what it actually, do we have an idea of the timeline?
We do have, I can say, we have a pretty clear idea, and there's a couple of different programs, and we've sort of been talking about them. On the access piece, and it's actually $42 billion for the access part, like how to make sure there's a wire or a connection, cell phone. Some of it will be low Earth orbit satellites, believe it or not. That is going to roll out over the next several years. We're actually doing we have a big milestone coming up next week where we're going to be making allocations to the states about what their slice of the $42 billion is going to be. It's going to take, I say it's going to take several, and I should say, by the way, we do think it's going to be enough money. We're optimistic that $42 billion will be enough to connect everybody, get everybody a high-speed, reliable, affordable connection. Industry's going to be matching and chipping in a lot of money there too. So we are going to close that divide. It's going to take several years because it's complicated to give out money well, it turns out.
Yeah.
And states have to we've got homework assignments, states have to give us plans. The real build out will happen in like 2025 and 2026. That'll be the peak where you see shovels hit the ground. But I do think within the next decade, and probably sooner, we will have most of these networks built and people will have that access. The digital equity issues around affordability and adoption, how we train everybody, that's also a longer term thing, and this affordable connectivity program is the one that's going to run out of money.
Yeah, so even with these networks being built and the $42 billion in additional money to build out these networks in unserved and underserved areas, you still have the issues, of course, around maintenance and innovation added, and that's where for private companies like ours, we will continue to invest, and we have to invest billions of dollars more in maintaining these networks because, again, it's not just we have a network and that's it. So, and with regard to the subsidy program, the individual subsidy program, as Alan was saying, the money could run out in this first chunk of money by April, May of next year, and if we're more successful in getting people to sign up, it could be sooner. The question is then also, what happens after that? Let's say Congress funds the money that's necessary to get through next year, and we certainly hope it does, but what happens after that? Because it would be so unfair, of course, for people who've signed up and have had a voucher to give them internet access for free to, in 2025, not have a program that will continue to offer that to them. So there has to be that kind of an investment made, and that involves a lot more complicated issues around things I won't really get into here. More
Right
acronyms.
here. There's a mic right over here. Sorry. Thank you. This may have to be the last question. Now wait for the mic because it'll be picked up for the recording.
Yes,
Thanks,
hi everybody.
Hasami.
My name is Hazami Bermada, and I'm currently serving as the director for the Digital Equity Accelerator, which is an initiative of Aspen Institute's Aspen Digital in collaboration with HP. My question is, you guys talked a lot about 3 of the 4 pillars of digital equity, but participatory and relevant content is something that we often don't talk about or invest into. So once you get people online, access to the internet, most tools and services online are not designed for and with communities that need them, specifically the most underrepresented communities that you mentioned. What are your companies doing, or what other initiatives can we invest more into to specifically look at that 3rd pillar, which is oftentimes receiving the least amount of investment?
I'm not sure I understand the question. I'm sorry. Maybe because we're almost out of time.
Just describe,
Kidding. No. I'm sorry. Could you describe it again?
So for example, elderly populations knowing how to navigate the internet
right.
once they get access to it.
Yes. Let me give you, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Well, let me use another great example. This one animates me so much, right? And you actually can see Comcast running 30-second commercials about this, about a program in Detroit at a senior citizen center in Detroit that has been serving seniors for decades. They now have a digital navigator program where teens come in and help the seniors do many things online that the seniors find, again, either productive or go to the joy of life. And it's just a beautiful program, and it addresses the needs of those seniors in that place. It's not like we tell them this is what you need. Very locally focused. Brings tears to your eyes if you watch that. Have you seen that commercial? Yeah. Okay, anyway.
Well,
Alan.
No, it's so funny because I was going to mention that. The Ashbury Senior Community Center, I think it's in east side of Cleveland. Is that the one you're thinking
No,
about?
this is one at the St. Patrick Senior Center in Detroit.
In Detroit. I'm sorry. So, okay, I'll give you another example. Ashbury Senior Community Center, east side of Cleveland. They do very similar stuff. They've been around for a while, helping seniors get online, helping them think about, everything from how to make a resume to, find their favorite content. I was visiting Phoenix recently and went to Chicanos por la Causa. Folks have ever heard of that organization? Another terrific, terrific organization, meeting people where they are. I asked them, and they're like, it's the telenovelas for our community, right? That is what is bringing them on. And you say, what can I do? And that's the entry point to say, yes, you should get this. We're going to get, and they were giving people devices, refurbished Chromebooks. And then the question is, what do they do when they get online? And that is the last piece of the puzzle. It's not going to be for government, by the way, to figure that out. We should not be creating the content for them, but we need to be funding folks who can help them understand what is going to draw them in, what they can do online, meet them in the languages they need, meet them with the content that's going to bring them joy or help them be a productive part of society, get them the health care they need. There's killer apps for lots of different communities in lots of different spaces, and it's going to be folks like the folks you're working with who are going to help make that last connection.
Excellent. I'm sorry, there are so many more questions, but we're out of time. So, Alan, Broderick, thank you so much, and thanks everybody. Thank you.